Well, good morning, everyone. Thomas Montgomery. It's a beautiful Wednesday morning, June 8th, 2022. We get together with our distribution partners most weekday mornings at this time, 8 o'clock Central. On occasion, travel will disrupt our schedule. For instance, we're going to be doing a workshop tomorrow, in-person workshop. So we will not have our Zoom tomorrow morning on Thursday, June 9th. I apologize for that. However, today we're going to drill down to the basics. And so regardless if you're a white label partner or a referral partner, it's important to understand that the big picture of what you and I do. We help small businesses do three things. We help them build their financial literacy, number one. Number two, we help them build a lender compliant loan package. And number three, we help them become credible enough on paper to get approved for funding. So let's focus on that third element, credibility. It's interesting, and doing what you and I do is both fun and challenging because we're working with people, and there's all different types of people, all different backgrounds and cultures and philosophies and educational levels and such. But what you and I know, it drills down to the very basic element. We have to be credible enough on paper to get funding. Now, what does credibility mean? It means different things based upon the type of capital we're pursuing. And so that's exactly why what you and I do is we take clients through that 4-week curriculum. Used to be a semester-long course that I taught at the college. People would have to apply to college, be accepted to college, sign up for the class, pay the 3 credit hours of tuition, buy a textbook, and go through a 12 to 14-week class. What you and I offer now is compressed into a 4-week curriculum where we're helping small business owners become credible on paper through the packaging process. But in addition to packaging, their business plan and assorted documents to get approved for a loan. Now there's different types of funding. So let's start with that. So there's debt-based funding, money we borrow that we promise to pay back. There's equity-based funding, money that we don't have to pay back, but we're usually diluting our ownership in our business. So we're selling shares of our company in exchange for a capital infusion. And then third would be earned income, which is great. And so when I used to teach this class in person on a regular basis, I taught it with Brad. Brad and I both work for the SBA, and he's an ex-banker. Actually, he's an ex-banker examiner. And that was part of his presentation, as he just clarified, hey, there's only 3 places the money can come from to grow your business. There's only 3: debt, equity, earned income. Now, within that being said, if most of what you and I will probably do as technical advisors is help people increase their financial literacy, build their loan package, and qualify for debt-based financing. So we've clarified that there's different types of financing or funding that's not debt-based, but that's the majority of what we do. So getting to the point here, for debt-based financing, it always comes down to the 3 C's, just like you and I are out teaching on a regular basis. What are the 3 C's? Credit, which could be personal and or business. Collateral, which is shown on the screen. We'll talk more about that in a moment. And then capacity. Capacity is often referred to also as cash flow. So let's talk a little bit about each one, and then we'll drill into the collateral. So so do all sources of capital require all 3 C's? Absolutely not. Now, it's best to have optimized and is strong in all 3 areas, all 3 C's. But do you have to have all 3 C's to get funding? No. Different sources of capital have different underwriting criteria. Some of them only require 1 of the 3 C's. But I don't think that there's any of them that require 0 or none of the 3 C's. Therefore, we need to be credible on paper We need to help clients become credible on paper with at least one of the 3 C's, ideally all 3 C's. So credit is not our focus right now. And again, we address that there's business credit as well as personal credit. From a collateral perspective, let's drill deeply into that. And so those of you that are white label partners, I think this will be really helpful because you're the ones that are mentoring your clients. So when we go through the 4 modules, we get to module 3 and we learn about financial management, and module 3 teaches them about what a balance sheet is. Now, I know I'm preaching to the choir, right? You all have this background, but just for conversation's sake, a balance sheet shows the assets and liabilities of the business. You will get, I hate to say it's pushback, but because I think that seems maybe insensitive, but we'll just go with that. You'll get pushback from some of your clients. Well, I don't have a balance sheet and I don't need one. This is a startup business. Well, what they've just done is they held this sign above their head saying, I'm financially illiterate, because from the moment that a business is formed, we should be able to create a balance sheet because it's going to show what the assets and liabilities of the business are. For the financially illiterate, they might push back to you and say, well, my business, I just told you my business is a startup. I don't have any assets. I don't have any liabilities. So there's not going to be anything on my balance sheet. So you take that. I'm not going to give you a balance sheet. Well, we need to be able to reflect in writing in terms of what lenders would expect to see. But let's break down that type of response. And you can spin off of it a little bit. So we'll pick on, and this is just random, just picking a name. We'll pick on Hannah. Hannah's on our call today. So let's say Hannah gave me that type of BS answer. Hey, my business doesn't have a balance sheet. It's not relevant. It's a startup business. I'd say, well, Hannah, do you know what's on the balance sheet? Not testing the client, but just clarifying. It was addressed in module 3, shows assets and liabilities of the business. And so Hannah might come back and say, well, yeah, my business has none of that. Well, that's great news, isn't it, Hannah? And she'll be like, what? Well, your business doesn't have any liabilities. Don't you think that's going to be attractive to the lender? So if we showed the lender that we're applying for the funding, that your business doesn't have a bunch of debt, in this case, no debt already, don't you think that's going to increase the business's borrowing capacity versus if you already had a bunch of loans or a big loan? Well, sure. Well, how do we communicate that to the lender? On the balance sheet. So first of all, the fact that a balance sheet has no liabilities is great news. That's and it doesn't have to be that way. So I'm not saying that if you already have some liabilities, you can't borrow more money. But I'm just saying you can spin that financially illiterate objective or obstacle that someone might give you. I don't have a balance sheet. I don't need one. Nothing's on it. To great. There's no liabilities. Awesome. Well, let's put that in writing because the lender would love to see that. The lender needs to know how much debt the business already has. So that's the glass is half full perspective. Now, on the other side, if the client says, well, my client or my balance sheet doesn't have any assets. My business doesn't have any assets. There's not going to be anything on the balance sheet. Stop and think about that for a moment. So what that's saying is this business is insolvent. This business has nothing of value. And I'm trying to go get a loan, usually a big loan for this business that has nothing of value, no assets, no collateral. So if you get away from the emotion of it, you start to realize, well, that sounds pretty shitty, doesn't it? Right? That didn't sound too good. What banker in the world is going to look at the fact that your business that's insolvent is trying to borrow a bunch of money? So with that, obviously a weak balance sheet in terms of assets, we call a collateral shortfall. It's actually very, very common. So it's not an insurmountable obstacle, but if the client's balance sheet has a collateral shortfall, then what we would need to do is supplement that. Well, how do we resolve a collateral shortfall? Well, we would normally add assets to the balance sheet. And so that can be done based upon either the client having other assets that they can add. Maybe they have another business that they could transfer ownership to, or they can move personal assets over. And the other would be that we could transfer assets over to the balance sheet. And so that's where the collateral support program comes in. So we're going to dig into that some. You see it here on the screen. So if they already have available assets that they can use, then that is perfect. If not, we can get them set up on the collateral support program. As a white label partner, you're able to monetize this as well. So as we're solving the client's problem, you're able to mark up. You can get the assets at wholesale and sell them at retail if desired. So what the collateral support program does, it addresses one of the 3 C's, because what you and I are going to have to do as technical advisors in many cases is help clients become more credible on paper. So is helping them with a business plan valuable? It sure is. Is helping pull together the documentation valuable and helpful? It sure is. Is teaching them these financial principles going to benefit them? It sure will. But ultimately, what do we need to do if we want to borrow money? We have to have at least one of the 3 C's, and ideally all of the 3 C's. And so the collateral support program addresses collateral. The 60-day credit sweep, which is a different tab here, addresses credit and credibility. And then if they have a cash flow issue, they can always become a white label partner and add additional income. So it's important for you to realize that you and I have all 3 arrows in our quiver. If someone's short on collateral, we can resolve that. Here we go. A little bit of a delay. We can resolve that 100% of the time as soon as the screen changes to the collateral support program. If they have credit deficiencies on personal, then we can resolve that 100% of the time with the free 60-day credit sweep. Now we're back to this with the delay. If their business credit is not strong enough, we help them build their business credit. If they don't have the capacity or the cash flow, then we can help them resolve that. So what questions do any of you have regarding the 3 C's and the resources, the techniques, the solutions that you and I have to be able to address the 3 C's of clients that are going through the program? Because just enrolling in the program and going through the modules doesn't make them credible on paper. Now, they may come to us and they may be credible enough already to get funding. So I'm not suggesting that everyone needs help with their 3 C's, and we assess where they're at as we go through the 4-week curriculum. But when we get complaints, it's almost always financially illiterate people that think, oh, I just signed up, so now I'm going to qualify for $1 million. Where's my $1 million? Well, no, you have to be credible on paper. You have to meet the underwriting criteria of the given source of capital, and you always have to have at least one of the 3 C's. It's best to have all 3 C's. If collateral is an issue, we have a resource for that. If credit is the issue, we have a resource for that. And if capacity or cash flow is the issue, then we have a resource for that. So who has questions on the 3 C's or at a high level, how these resources work? All right, so that's weird. A little delay there. Stan is asking about on the collateral support program, how that benefits the client. And so I appreciate your direct question, Stan. So it benefits the client in two ways. The first way that it benefits the client is that we're able to add assets to their balance sheet so they have the collateral that's needed to get approved for the funding. And so that's the most direct benefit, that within short period of time, says 24 hours quickly, we can take their balance sheet from being weak and having a collateral shortfall to having adequate collateralization. So that's the first benefit, Stan. The second one is a bit more complicated, but to me, frankly, more interesting. Then we also, so we're going to transfer $100,000 or more of real assets to the client's balance sheet. These are real assets, not pretend, not fake, not fuzzy. We sell the collateral support program to law firms that are buying it. So obviously it's credible, it's legitimate, it's legal, it's ethical. Now, once the assets transferred to the client's balance sheet, that resolves that issue for credibility, for financing, for funding approval. But also now then we're going to start the process of helping the client liquidate those receivables. Because would you rather have 100,000 of AR, accounts receivable, on your balance sheet, or would you rather have $100,000 of cash in your bank account and on your balance sheet? Obviously, everybody would rather have cash. So then the liquidation process is moving those receivables from being an AR to cash, to liquidate it. There are three primary ways that our collateral support team helps the clients. In this case, we call them debt buyers, those that participate in the collateral support program, to liquidate. There are different approaches. Different people have different opinions. I'll try to be objective, but I have a strong opinion on what works best. But one option is to collect the money. Makes sense, right? So if the debt buyer has bought a portfolio of receivables, of assets that's real, that's legitimate, it would make sense to collect that money. You could collect it internally or use third-party debt collectors. So that's one of the three liquidation strategies, and that's fine and makes sense to do. Another strategy, which I have to admit is my favorite, is to litigate. So liquidate through litigation, because these are real debts. These are not pretend debts. And so if the debt buyer were to file, for example, and I'm not giving legal advice, we're just talking high level discussion, but theoretically, if the debt buyer were to go to their small claims court in their geographic area and file a suit against the people that owe, that are part of that portfolio, they're called the debtors. The debt buyer is called the creditor. So you could first invoice the client and say, hey, you owe money, pay it or I'm going to sue you. That's legal and ethical. If they don't pay it or make payment arrangements, then what do? You could, in the second option called litigation, then you could file suit. And unfortunately, we have to file suit against people that don't pay us. Our history so far has been 100% victories. And so when you have a strong agreement, it's almost incomprehensible that you won't win. So once you file suit against the debtors, if you choose to litigate, which you don't have to do this, we're just talking about three different strategies. There's collect, there's litigate, we haven't talked about number three yet. But what happens is when you litigate, then the police or the process server shows up at the debtor's house or place of employment, serving them, hey, you've been sued. Well, that kind of sucks, right? Doesn't look real good in front of the boss. It doesn't look real good in front of your family. And so suing someone can get their attention. And then that may motivate them to try to settle, or if not, it'll go to suit. Small claims courts are designed where it doesn't require you to have an attorney, so you don't have to have that expense. Now, granted, there are some law firms that'll do all of that for you. They don't charge up front. They just take a piece of the action. So you could file the small claim suits if you wanted to litigate as a debt buyer, or you could defer it to a law firm. You keep 100% of it if you do it yourself. The chances of winning that lawsuit are remarkably high, 99.99%. And then the debtor pays the amount that they owe you, or owe the debt buyer, plus court cost and collection fees. And so obviously it's not advantageous to the debtor to go to court, because now they not only paid what they would have paid anyway, now they're paying more, and that kind of sucks. Now, just because you win the lawsuit doesn't mean that they automatically slide the cash to you. So there might be a willingness, or there might have to be garnishments where you can file or have an attorney file using that judgment to garnish their wages, to draw money out of their bank account, to even have what's called a sheriff's sale. And that's where the debtor's assets, the police show up, they take the toaster, they take the TV, they take whatever assets, and state by state varies what can be done to the debtor, but essentially puts it up for auction. So these are real debts that build the balance sheet. There are 3 different ways that the debt buyers can liquidate the debt. There's the collection activity, in-house or external with collection agencies. There's litigation, which we just dug into a bit. And the third is just simply to resell the debt, to mark it up and sell it for a profit. So what I want to thank you, Stan, and sorry for the 5-minute answer, but so going back. So what we've been discussing is that what you and I do as technical advisors, regardless if you're just a referral partner or a white label partner, is we help clients build financial literacy. We help them build a lender compliant loan package, and we help them become credible enough for funding. And with that, we've described that the collateral support program is very effective in helping build collateral. We've got the free 60-day credit sweep, which is very effective in improving credit. And if their issue is capacity, we can help them increase cash flow. Are there any questions that anyone has for us this morning? All right. Well, I appreciate your time this morning. We will not get together tomorrow on Thursday because of travel, and then we'll be back together on Friday. Have a great day. Thank you much. Bye-bye.